Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling. This is the Raging Verbalist number 124. Had to make sure I got it right. And this is, of course, a really exciting one. If you've never been on Raging Verbalist before, quick ground rules also, go out there, hit the like button, subscribe, hit notifications if you're on YouTube. If you're watching this via the Facebook group, Position to Win book, go do that. You can always throw in some things there. And Raging Verbalist, I talk about a variety of topics. I have someone who stands in for you to ask the questions that would be on your probing minds and otherwise. So without any more delay, let's introduce the lovely, ever lovely Sandra. Sandra, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. It's springtime, and we're going to be talking about a really hot topic today. So get ready, strap on your helmets, because we're talking about what today, Sandra? What are we talking about?
All right, it's the USFL.
So we're talking about spring football. And Sandra, what is the first question? And if you've not heard that USFL exists, that it's alive, it's going on, well, hopefully you're watching this just in time so you don't miss any of the exciting action.
All right, so are you going to be watching the USFL's inaugural game?
Well, I'm going to be watching the first game for sure, and that's, by the way, on the 16th of April, 2022, from Birmingham, Alabama. And yes, I will be watching that, and it will be the Birmingham Stallions, I think they're called, and the New Jersey Generals. And for those of you who remember the USFL, which we'll be going a little bit down that memory lane in a minute, is that what happened is that somebody swooped in, bought all of the names, all of the stuff, and this is a resurrection of the league and what is going to happen with that. So spring football is alive and well in Alabama.
All right, so do you think that spring football has even a prayer of making it?
Well, before we get to that, I didn't get to ask, are you, being a
Oh.
college football fan, a Nebraska Cornhusker, you even paid to be in the stands when you couldn't be in the stands. You're such a supporter. Is it Go Big Red? Is that the chewing gum or is that the football team? I don't know which. But are you going to watch some of the inaugural weekend?
I am, but Mike Riley is the Generals coach now, and he was coach for Nebraska for a little bit and proudly dug us a grave. Didn't help the program, in my humble opinion. So I will be rooting for the Stallions, not the Generals.
There you go. We already have a rivalry kicking up right here on the Raging Verbalist. So, do I think spring football has even a prayer of making it? Well, baseball is barely started, and unless you're really a diehard baseball fan, and basketball is kind of wrapping up, because they're in their second, or they're not to their third season, as I call it, because the playoffs seemingly go on and on and on. So if you're sitting there wondering what are you going to do, and you want to watch some football, so they have a prayer. They've done some smart things. So let's talk about a couple of smart things they did. One is they are trying to resurrect the entire league. So they bought the entire league. I don't know if they bought the league, but they bought the copyright material, though there may be some controversy about that. Don't know. Always a dicey thing. But what they're going to do is they're going to play all 41 games that start to finish in Birmingham, Alabama. Smart move, because logistics right now suck. Let me tell you, having just flown last week, just repeat after me, all you Raging Verbalists: logistics suck, logistics suck. And that's a nice way of saying you got to fly through airports, which are really bad. So they're putting the whole thing in Birmingham, which I know from business experience is a big football area. So they have a prayer of making it. We'll see. The quality of the game on the field, though, is whether or not people are going to watch it or not. So we'll see if they have a prayer. And of course, being in the Bible Belt, being in Alabama, there'll be a lot of prayer going on there anyway, especially since they're kicking off Easter weekend.
All right. So, how many other leagues have been tried over the years that you remember?
So this is one of those trick questions because I start thinking about all of the years because growing up and watching, being a very rabid football fan, grew up in Denver, Colorado. So any of you out there who are Bronco haters, I mean, I suffered through their terrible days early on. My brother and I went out to the airport to greet the team when they tied. I mean, let's just face it, they sucked for a long time. But we were just football crazy. So I have seen a variety of leagues come and go. And one of them was the World Football League, and it was in the 70s. And they decided they were going to, just instantly form a football league. There's an entire marketing case study about all the mistakes they made, like overpaying for older athletes and, going and mounting a raid on this stuff. Don't even know how many games they made it. I mean, it just kind of slipped away. I watched, that, and then there's the USFL popped up later on, and then there's been the XFL and the AAC. I think it was the ACC or the AFC. I don't know, not AFC, but anyway, there's at least four that I know of that I kind of vaguely remember, and now we have this one.
All right. So, did you watch the original USFL games?
Well, when the original USFL games came about, when the league was announced, there was a lot fewer media outlets. There was a lot less, TV going on. And by the way, at that point in time, the NFL had kind of locked out a bunch of, a bunch of avenues. And there, heaven forbid. I mean, I know for some of you, this will become as a shock. Steady yourself. Fox as a network didn't exist yet. So they kicked off this incredibly long season, 2-point conversion, instant replay, all that. And this is all my way of saying I watched it. They had snagged a lot of really good players like Jim Kelly and Herschel Walker and Steve Young, and then a lot of not so good players. And they kicked off the USFL. So I watched it because I thought, wow, what else is there to watch on TV? I used to watch a lot more TV then than I do now. And so I watched it, and some of the games were pretty good, and some of the teams were not so good.
So, what marketing mistakes did the USFL make the first time around?
Well, there's a there's actually room to write a book about just the marketing mistakes, but there is a book that's available on Amazon. And no, we don't have an affiliate link, but it's called Football. It's called Football for a Buck. And it's the crazy rise and crazier demise of the USFL by Jeff Pearlman, interviewed like 400 people. And he talks about how this thing went crazy and then went right off the rails. Marketing mistakes they made. First off, they thought they could instantly form a league. Guess what? They're looking to try to do that again. They spread them all over the place. By the way, the Colorado Gold, that was the USFL team, was like, had some of the favorites from Denver, Craig Morton, who had taken us to our first Super Bowl and was trounced by the Cowboys. Boo-hoo. Bad day for Craig that day. Sorry. But anyway, still like him because he took us to the first Super Bowl. But, the original mistakes they made is teams spread out all over the place. They put a team in Los Angeles. And all I can tell you, having been in the LA area for a very long time, is that LA is kind of a sports town, but isn't a sports town because it's spread out so much. And the biggest mistakes they made is that after they made it through that first season, white knuckling it, for some reason they got really insane. And love him or hate him, Donald Trump came into the thing. And at the time, I mean, if you think he was a shameless promoter today, you ain't seen nothing like when he was in the 80s and was going, all over the place. They originally had kind of a gentleman's agreement that people weren't going to pay crazy money. That went out the window. They expanded the number of teams, even though they didn't have a base yet. And then they said, hey, let's go in. And then Donald Trump pushed for them to go into playing directly against the NFL. Dumb, 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 dumb. Lots of mistakes. So if you ever want to see that, then you'll see all these mistakes. Now, by the way, they could have avoided many of those mistakes if they had a time machine, had transported themselves in the future, and they had obtained a book of wisdom, a book of knowledge, something that would have given them a sense of what they should have done. And of course, I'm talking about my book. Most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, position to win. I could have retitled it for them. Most football leagues fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years, took them a little over 3 years because they did not position themselves to win. By the way, you can get this at positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. You can also get the physical copies at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, and wherever books are sold, you can go order it. Also, you can get all the digital versions, Kindle, Nook, and Apple, and you will learn a lot about some of the things that they did. And when you read this, you'll say, oh, so I would suggest if you want to read about the USFL, you get the book about the USFL, which I read, Perlman, never met the guy, found it interesting, found it fascinating, because I'm always interested in people who have absolutely horrendous marketing mistakes. I just watch that and I go, wow. And by the way, that speaks to the fact that just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that you can actually go start anything and make it work, because the USFL was an example of a bunch of guys with a bunch of money who burned through a ton of it, only to, of course, go into this whole long process and fail. By the way, they did win their lawsuit against the NFL, but I'll leave it to all of you to go read the book, and then you'll find out what the result is and all of that. It was horrendous. So go pick it up. And if you do, that'd be great. By the way, if you go to positiontowinbook.com, there's some free things over there. And, and then you can always go to our Facebook group and check it out. All right, Sandra, what's next?
All right. So with that, what advice would you give to the new USFL?
Number one is position yourself as a spring league. Make sure that you keep your costs. Number two is keep your costs in line. Number three, if this Birmingham thing works, maybe you keep it at Birmingham. Again, we're coming just out of a pandemic. Number four, don't overexpand. And number five, for God's sakes, don't try to move to the fall. Is there room for another league? Well, there was an arena league, come and gone. NFL Europe, come and gone. And by the way, I didn't mention those, previously, because the whole world is littered with this. So my suggestion is stay in your lane, build your position, and make sure you do that. By the way, I will tell them a mistake they have on their website right now. I went on their USFL website. First and foremost is that at the very top, if anybody's listening to this from the USFL, at the very top, have me sign in or give my email to you. And then, but you got to have better copy than we're going to keep you apprised and keep you up to date of the latest news. Who cares? Pitch me, give me something. Maybe you should have like a viewer's guide so we know what's going on. Anything to beg to get that email would be a smarter move, but it's pretty boring. It's pretty lame. Don't feel bad though, because there are lots of big leagues out there, including the NFL, that don't really build lists and they take it for granted. And all I can tell you is that in the future, the list is going to be king and you should do that. All right, what's next?
All right. So how critical do you think people will be watching a new league?
Well, I think there's going to be some diehard football fans. The way to get a spark out of this thing is if people, here's how you know if they're going to start making this thing work, is if there's going to be betting. So if people start wagering on this, and I don't know if Vegas has a line on it or not, because when I've Googled it, it doesn't automatically pop up. So possibly people aren't betting on it yet. So I think that people will be critical of it if it turns out to be a bad or lousy product. Sports people will watch sports. You want proof of it? Just go look at the proliferation of sports channels and the stuff that they put on there. I was watching a Formula One auto race, and for a lot of people in North America, they don't, well, at least in the US, they're not big fans. And they cut away, and they trimmed it. By the way, this is a few years ago, but they cut away from ESPN for that. And they went to the cornhole championship. And no, I'm not creating a negative environment. I'm not getting into the whole rainbow thing. Cornhole is like a hunk of plywood a distance away. So think of it as this is for people who can't figure out how to play horseshoes. So they get these little bean bags, and they they had the cornhole quarterfinals. So we left the most prestigious auto racing in the world to go to cornholing. I kid you not. It is, I mean, even Sandra cannot contain her normal professional demeanor to understand that we did that. So I think that people will become critical if the stuff doesn't work very well.
All right. So do you still laughing about cornhole? Okay.
All right. Well, see, you didn't expect that one, did you? Huh?
No.
And of course, I didn't even know who won. I mean, they had a trophy, they had a presentation.
Oh my gosh.
They had somebody who was talking to the crowd of a few hundred.
You have confetti come down like at the end of the Super Bowl.
Well, I don't think they can afford confetti.
Oh, okay.
A 12-piece kazoo band or something. I don't know.
Exactly. All right. Do you think that people will be wagering real money on the USFL?
Well, if the USFL was smart, given the fact that we have now gone gambling crazy, and if you think that I'm opposed to it, I'm just opposed that I'm not making money off of it. But right now, people are wagering on everything. So I think that people, if the USFL, but I'm sure that they're trying to be careful about it, just like the NFL. I mean, I'm surprised that the NFL put a team in Las Vegas. The Raiders are the perfect team to put in Las Vegas. I'm not surprised that they're selling out because there's lots of people in Vegas every day who goes, geez, wouldn't it be cool to go to something? But I think that people will start wagering real money if, in fact, the game proves to be interesting, and there are some interesting things. Now, they have some new rules. So, by the way, you're going to have to go find them because, of course, there wasn't an easy download for me. I don't want to dig that deep. I mean, hey, it's okay. I'll watch it. Maybe they'll explain it to me, and we'll see. But if they get people to start wagering, and here's the biggest thing: stay away from politics, guys. Focus on the game. But wagering, why not? Who knows? Maybe that would be the way to do it. Is that you have one of the major gaming sites lets you watch the game on the gaming site so you can wager as it goes, keep the action going. So I think that people will eventually, because they wager on everything. People will wager on everything. Now, will they wager real money? That will be the true test.
All right. So what lessons can people learn from watching the attempt to get another football league on the air?
Well, we are watching in a petri dish. If people know what that is, maybe you didn't make it through high school chemistry or something, or biology. I don't even know, do they teach biology anymore? Especially with this whole question about what is, what isn't. But anyway, but a petri dish is this little dish. Maybe the USFL is in a bigger petri dish or a pizza pan or something. And what you're watching is you're watching people throw all these things into it. And the lesson that you can learn is, did they position it correctly? Does it have a place in people's minds and the fans? And watch and see if this grows or not. Do they get people interested? They get them hooked? Do they get this thing going? See, the reason why rivalries work is that people become emotionally attached to this and they get excited about it. It's one of the reasons why I'm very cautious about betting on football, because I have teams that I really like. And that has this like distortion field in my head, like, look at that. See, I'm doing a little distortion field right there. And people have distortions and they lose their shirt based upon it because they want an outcome versus and they want to think the outcome will come versus, will it come or not come? So the point of it is that the lessons we can learn as business owners, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're out there in marketing, is to watch carefully and say to yourself, what would I have done, differently or not differently? The fact that I found out that they're going to play all 41 games, and I found it yesterday. The fact that some of this stuff is somewhat of a mystery, that I've talked to a lot of people in travels, 20. I mean, that's a lot because, again, it's this pandemic time. I'm not speaking to a group of people. And I was talking to a guy in Denver. We're flying to Ontario. He lives in Kansas City. He goes to Kansas City Chief games, even though he's a Raider fan. Talk about a mixed message there. But anyway, he and I were talking. I said, what do you think about the USFL? And he said, what? Now he's 35 years old. He's their demo. And they didn't get to him. So the point of it is that they need to get to that audience. And I think that what we can learn is we can see win, lose, or draw, success or failure. Did they get it right in the first 5 minutes, the first weekend, over a period of time? Did they get it right or not? And see if it makes it past 3 to 5 years. Does it build a fan base? Does it go further? I'll end with a story about going to an Arena Football League game in Denver, McNichols Arena. Went there with my father and my brother, and this thing was a zoo. I mean, they did so many things. I mean, we had noise makers, these big, inflatable tubes that we could slap together and create all this kind of noise and crazy and all this other stuff. And it was a carnival. It was out of control. And they had that thing packed. Now, the Arena League went broke because, other than places like Denver, they weren't packed. They weren't filled. They weren't that way. So they have to figure out a way to get them there. As the eminent Italian philosopher Yogi Berra says, if the fans don't show up, there's basically nothing we can do. And I know that's with all due respect to the ghost of Yogi, that's a kind of a version of it, but I'm just going to say, you got to get people to show up. We'll see if anybody shows up in Birmingham. And most importantly, will you show up as a viewer? And are you going to be taking notes and learning lessons? Because this is a grand experiment. Fox and their partners are spending a bunch of money to do this. And are they going to win or lose? And are they going to get the eyeballs to watch the new USFL? We'll update this over time. We'll see what Sandra thinks as she watches it and goes and roots against an ex-coach that she has a grudge against. We'll see if when I watch it, if I get entranced by it and if that's exciting or not. And more importantly, we'll see if all of you take the time and your day and your life to go watch a new experiment in spring football.